Council, it's Monday, December 8th, 2025, 6 p.m. Tony, please call the roll.
Yeager.
Yep.
Erickson.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
Chesak.
Yes.
Johnson.
Here.
Stunek. O'Day.
Here.
Badeau.
Here.
All right, next up we have number 3. This is the budget public hearing and presentation. And I believe this is for Connie Hillman, our finance director. She gets to go through the presentation that we all love. Go ahead, Connie, take it away.
So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to discuss the City of Brainerd's 2026 budget and levy and to allow for public input. This is not the meeting to discuss the valuation that has been placed on your property. Those meetings are held in May at the Board of Equalization. However, questions regarding the property valuation and classification can be directed to the Land Services Department at the county, and their number is 218-824-1010. The Minnesota property tax system is very complex, so this is a simplified version of it. It all starts with the estimated market value. For Crow Wing County, that is determined by the assessor's office. A statutory formula is then applied based on how the property is classified, and that equals the tax capacity of the city. The city council sets its city's levy, and this is also the city's income or the revenue. The city's levy is divided by the total tax capacity of the city, which equates the city's tax rate, and the tax rate is then applied to each of these parcels to determine the property owner's tax bill. It is important to note in Minnesota that tax jurisdictions set the levy in dollars. They do not set the tax rate. Your property value determines your proportionate share of the dollars that goes to each jurisdiction. The tax rate is a result of the levy dollar needed and the total tax capacity of each jurisdiction. So let's take a look at the city's estimated market value. The estimated market value of your property on January 2nd, 2025 is what is used to calculate the amount you pay for property taxes in 2026. One of the main items that the assessor's office uses is a sales ratio study, which analyzes sales that took place between the time frame of October 2023 and September of 2024. This study determines the value on January 2nd, 2025 assessment date. In March is when you get your valuation notices. In May is when the Board of Equalizations are held. In November, proposed property tax statements are sent out. In December, we have the tax levy hearing, which is where we're at tonight. Your property tax statements will be mailed in March of 2026, and the first half taxes is due in May, and the second half taxes is due by October 15th. This is a comparison of the City of Brainerd's total estimated market value for pay year 2025 and 2026. Overall, the estimated market value increased 1.6% for pay year 2026 over pay year 2025. This chart shows the history of the estimated market values for the City of Brainerd. 2023 and 2024 increases were significant. They were double digits at 22.2 and 14.9% respectively, whereas the 2025 and 2026 increases are a little bit more in line with the other years at 4.1 and 1.6%. Now let's look at the tax capacity of the city. If we take the total estimated market value and apply the statutory formula based on classification, this equates to an estimated tax capacity of $13,470,803 for the City of Brainerd for pay year 2026. This is a $174,217 increase in tax capacity. The tax capacity for the city is about 1.1% of the estimated market value. This graph is the estimated tax capacity by classification. Starting in 2022 or 2023, we see a shift in the tax burden from commercial industrial properties to the other in residential. Residential property still is the biggest portion of the tax capacity at 61%. So what does an increase in the tax capacity mean? Well, the city has its levy, aka its revenue, and if there's no change to that levy, you have an increase in the city's tax capacity, you would expect to see a decrease in the city's tax rate. So we've looked at the estimated market value and the tax capacity of the city. The next thing we want to look at is the city's levy. The city determines its levy through the budgeting process. We estimate all of the expenditures, personnel costs, supplies, services, debt, capital, and we estimate all of the non-property tax revenues, the fines, fees, LGA, and the difference between the two is the levy needed. Per the League of Minnesota Cities Handbook, Chapter 20, It says that budgeting is basically planning and prioritizing goals in the coming year based on experiences in the past year or years. We'll start by looking at the operating expenditures and personnel services. Personnel services with a budgeted amount of approximately $9.58 million is the largest expense category of the operating expenses. Personnel services has increased about $487,000 over the 2025 adopted budget. The increase is primarily due to contracts that were settled and employees moving through the city's pay scale. The City Council is also budgeting an additional 0.6 equivalent full-time employee in the working funds. This is a result of integrating the technology departments, all the city departments, with the utility department. All union contracts and wages that affect the levy for 2026 have been set. The 2026 health insurance rate for plans that the majority of employees have increased an average of 3% over the 2025 rates. And the council will be using the one-time public aid that was received in 2023 to fund 33% of a 1.5 police officers in 2026. We'll see this reflected in the use of fund balance later. We're budgeting to have 2 current open positions and another position that will open in January to be filled in 2026. And we're budgeting that they will elect the $3,400 family option for health insurance. The city had a very favorable renewal in its workers' comp. The rates decreased by 25%, plus the city's experience mod went from 0.89 to 0.78%. The budget also includes an estimated cost for the new Minnesota paid family medical leave plan that goes into effect January 1st. But our services increased just under $130,000 over the 2025 budget. We're budgeting to use a third-party contractor for inspections needed for certain building projects that were carried over from 2025, and we will also see this reflected in the use of fund balance later. Assumed various renewal rates for computer software and added 1 new software to assist with and to track data requests. And assumes the city will continue to lease vehicles, and we budgeted various assumptions for the general insurance that renews in March of 2026. We're budgeting an increase in the amount of aid passed through to the Fire Relief Association. We're budgeting to codify, which is basically to review and combine the city code in 2026. This is being planned for in the capital fund, and we will see the transfers into the general fund later on. And then we reviewed actual performance over the last 4 to 5 years and review of actual data through October 2025. After looking at operating expenses, we need to look at the amount needed to fund capital needs. The capital levy is for all city-owned facilities and equipment needs except for the enterprise funds. The council is holding the capital levy the same as the levy in 2025. Total capital purchases for 2026 total $6,776,211. And again, this excludes the equipment for the enterprise funds. This is a summary of the capital purchases that are currently being budgeted for in 2026 at the cost of $6.78 million. The Park Board has requested a $457,386 funding request in their long-term capital asset maintenance request. And this funding will not be spent in 2026, but it'll be used in future years to offset cost of projects. You may have noticed that the levy for capital equipment and facilities is $1.18 million, yet we're planning on spending $6.78 million in 2026. The goal of the City Council is to not have to issue debt for capital and facilities. However, with the remodel of the Fire Station 1, debt will need to be issued for the project. The next slide will show a portion of the 30-year capital plan. We're assuming that the capital levy will stay the same over the next 5 years. We have the $1.678 million of proposed capital expenditures for 2026, as well as the future year's budgets. And we have the $457,000 added to the park's long-term capital maintenance plan, as well as the future planned amounts. We have included issuing $5.16 million of bonds for the fire station remodel. That's estimated to be $5.5 million. At this point, with issuing bonds for the fire station remodel, the bottom line shows a positive cash flow over the next 5 years. The city also needs to levy for debt service. The city needs to levy for what is needed to make the August 2026 and February 2027 payments. For 2026, the debt levy is the same as it was in 2025 at $765,000. The city also needs to levy for things that are set by the charter or that the city has to fund. The levy for permanent improvements, which is basically for the maintenance of the roads, and for the senior center or senior activity, green space, and community festivals are based on a percentage of the 2025 total levy. The library levy is a 2% increase over 2025, and the EDA board requested the maximum allowed by state statute, which would have been about a $36,500 increase. But the council has decided to keep the EDA levy the same as 2024 and 2025 at $186,812. The Airport Commission requested a 2026 appropriation of $215,000. For 2025, if you recall, the council set the airport levy at $1,000 to eliminate the double taxation of the Brainerd residents for the airport. The county is going to separate the county's airport levy out from their general levy for 2026, which in essence eliminates the double taxation. Therefore, the airport levy is an increase of $214,000 for 2026. So when we add all of the budgeted expenditures that are supported by the levy, the total 2026 budgeted expenditures total $17,272,433, and this is an increase of $829,911 from the 2025 budget, or 5.05% increase. So now that we have looked at the total budgeted expenditures, we can now look at the total non-property tax revenues. Total budgeted non-property tax revenues total $9,633,560, which is an estimated increase of about $385,000 compared to the 2025 budget. The city is budgeting an additional $54,000 in building permit revenue in 2026 than budgeted in 2025. We see an increase in grants and aids of over $175,000. We're budgeting an increase in of $10,974 in local government aid, or LGA, from the state. We're also budgeting over $45,300 for police state aid and $46,800 in fire state aid. The increases are based on using the amounts received in 2025 for the 2026 budget. And the fire state aid is passed through the Fire Relief Association, as discussed previously. And new for 2026 is a traffic officer safety grant with just over $74,000 increase to the budgeted grants and aids. There's a $142,300 increase in other revenues. This accounts for the increase in interest revenue and the estimated increase in proceeds from the return of leased vehicles in 2026. The city has also changed the calculation for the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes from the electric department. For 2026, it'll be based on 3% of electric gross sales. The change to the pilot resulted in a $63,900 increase itself over the 2025 budget. Another item to consider when setting the levy is the use of any addition or use of fund balance. 2026 is an election year. The city budgets $15,000 a year for the elections that are held every other year. Therefore, in 2026, the city will decrease its fund balance by $15,000 to be used in 2026. We also see a use of fund balance in the amount of $101,650 of public safety aid. This is again 33% of 1.5 police officers and an increase in the budgeted cost for the records management software. The city is also projecting to use $86,900 of fund balance. This amount represents what will be paid to the third-party inspector relating to projects that had revenue that was collected in 2025. So the amount between the budgeted expenditures and non-property tax revenues equals the levy needed, and for 2026, this amount is $7,435,323 and is a 4.75% increase over the 2025 levy. The preliminary levy was adopted in September at $7,666,013. This was an 8% increase over the 2025 levy, and this was used to send out the proposed property tax statements property owners just received. The city's final levy set in December can be lower but cannot be higher than the preliminary levy. And since September, line items have been reviewed and initial assumptions have been changed based on additional information received. Each line item has reviews based on actual revenue and on average history, and therefore the final levy could be set at 4.75% increase to cover the budgeted expenditures. This table shows the preliminary levies and the final or proposed in the case of 2026. The city would like to avoid the peaks and valleys in the levy. This table shows that for 10 out of the last 17 years, the council has reduced the final levy set in December from the preliminary levy set in September. This chart also shows that the average increase in the levy over the last 15 years has been a 4.3% increase each year, a 3.3% increase each year over the last 10 years, and a 3.51% increase each year over the last 5 years. The city has over 80 different funds, but it does not officially adopt a budget for all the funds. This graph shows the funding sources for all governmental funds that the city adopts a budget for. The city does have 2 enterprise funds that it officially adopts a budget for, and the information is excluded from this graph. We have the amount that the city levies, which is 30.8% of all revenues budgeted. The next biggest portion is funding comes from intergovernmental revenue at 33.5% of budgeted revenues, with the biggest portion being from the state in the form of local government aid. The 2026 certified amount of LGA for the city is $5,255,866 and is the $10,974 more than what the city is to receive in 2025. In 2026, we'll have bond proceeds for the fire station remodel at 21.4% of budgeted revenues. And then we have revenue from charges of service and fines at 5.8%. The city will receive the contribution from the Public Utilities Department at 3.5% of total budgeted revenues. And then we have other taxes, licenses, permits, and miscellaneous, such as interest, assessments, etc., which total 6.3% of total budgeted revenues. It is important to note that 69.2% of budgeted revenues come from sources other than property taxes. Now, if we look at the budgeted expenditures, the general fund, public safety, and street funds are what we consider the working funds, and activities from these funds are supported by levy, which total 56.6% of total budgeted expenditures. Then we have capital at 27.5%, which is much higher this year due to the fire station remodel. We have transit at 7.3%, debt service at 3.1%, and road at 1.7%. And then we have the other programs that are in the charter, green space, senior activities, and community festivals, library, EDA, recycling, and city-owned parking lots at 3.8% of budgeted total expenditures. So now let's look at the city's tax rate. With a levy of a levy increase of 4.75% increase, the city's estimated tax rate is 55.718%. This is an estimated increase of 1.835% from the 2025 tax levy of 53.883%. Keep in mind that the preliminary levy was set at an 8% increase and had an estimated tax rate of 57.449%. And this is what was used to send out the proposed tax statements to property owners. Now let's look at the impact of applying the city's tax rate to the individual property owner's tax capacity, which determines the property owner's tax bill for 2026. Assuming a residential homestead property had an estimated market value of $150,000 in 2025, the property owner's tax capacity would have been $1,170. And again, this is determined by taking the estimated market value, applying the homestead exclusion and the statutory percentage, then applying the city's tax rate of 53.883% to the tax capacity. That is, the homeowner would have paid $630 in city taxes in 2025. The table shows the changes to the city's tax liability for 2026, assuming that there's no change in the value of the property. With a 4.75% increase in the levy, the homeowner would expect to see an increase in the amount due to city taxes of about $21. However, this is not what property owners are seeing because their estimated market values have changed, and the tax levy used for the proposed property tax statements had a levy increase of 8%, which is now currently at 4.75%. With the proposed property tax statement, a resident homestead owner who paid $630 in taxes in 2025 would have, and had an average increase of 2.5% increase in their estimated market value, would have saw on the proposed property tax statement about a $69 a year increase in their city tax liability. With a 4.75% increase in the tax levy, the same homeowner who had a 2.9% increase in their estimated market value will probably actually see an increase of about $48 per year in the city tax liability. So to update the city tax liability, we need to take the city tax liability from the proposed tax statement and subtract 3.0131%. If we take a look at the total tax capacity for a residential homeowner, again using the 2.9% increase in estimated market value, the total tax liability for 2026 is estimated to be $313, or about $47 a year, or 3.71% increase. The proposed property tax statement for 2026 would have shown a 5.37% increase in the total tax liability. There are two reasons the tax bill can change. One is the change in the tax rate, which is a result of the total levy set by the taxing jurisdiction and the total tax capacity of the jurisdiction, and a change in estimated market value. For 2026, the total tax rates are increasing, but the school referendum, which is based on estimated market value, did decrease, and so the net change in tax rate would have actually caused the homeowner's taxes to decrease by $3, or 0.24%. The impact on the estimated market value would increase the homeowner's taxes by $50, or 3.95%. For this homeowner, the change of the taxing jurisdiction is listed for each, and it shows the city's increasing by $47.88. In 2026, for every dollar a residential property owner pays in taxes, 20 cents goes to Crow Wing County, 2 cents go to the other, which is Region 5 and the Brainerd HRA, 26 cents to the school district, and 52 cents to the city. Now, if we look at the impact for a commercial property owner, assuming a commercial property owner had an estimated market value of $525,200 in 2025, the property owner's tax capacity in 2025 would have been $9,754. And that is determined by taking the estimated market value and applying the statutory percentage for a commercial property, and then applying the city's tax rate of 53.883% to the tax capacity. That commercial property owner would have paid about $5,256 in city taxes in 2025. Assuming that there's no change in the value of property, this table shows the estimated change to the city's tax liability based on various changes to the city levy. With a 4.75% increase in the levy, the commercial property owner would expect to see an increase in city tax liability about $179 a year. This again assumes that there's no change in the value of the property, and we know this assumption is unlikely, as it is not what property owners saw on their proposed property tax statements. With the proposed property tax statements, a commercial property owner who paid $5,256 in city tax liability in 2025, but had an average increase of 7.75%, is seeing about an $812 a year increase in their city tax liability in their proposed property tax statement. With a 4.75% increase in the levy and an estimated 7.7% increase in the estimated market value, they could see an actual estimated $630 a year increase in the city's tax liability. And again, to compute the updated tax liability, take the tax liability from the preliminary statement and subtract 3.0131%. If we take a look at the total tax impact for the commercial property owner and using a 7.7% increase in estimated market value, the total tax liability for 2025 would have been $12,126, and the proposed 2026 tax liability would be $13,265, a 1,139 increase, or 9.39%. The proposed property tax statement would have showed a 10.9% increase in total tax liability. Again, there's two reasons: a change in tax rate and a change in estimated market value. For 2026, the total tax rate is up. A change in tax rate would increase this property owner's taxes by $75, or 0.26%. An increase in the estimated market value also increased the property taxes by $1,064, or 8.77%, for a net increase of the $1,139. For this property owner, the increase in the per taxing jurisdiction is listed, with the city share being $630 a year increase, or 55% of the total increase. For every dollar a commercial property owner pays in taxes in 2026, 19 cents goes to the general fund, 17 cents to Crow Wing County, 1 cent for the other, which is Region 5 and Brainerd HRA, 19 cents to the school district, and 44 cents to the city. The final budget and levy is scheduled to be adopted at the December 15th, 2025 council meeting. If it is not, we will have to hold a special council meeting because the final levy and the general fund budget must be adopted by December 31st. And with that, we can take any public comments.
Thank you, Connie. Anybody up here have questions for Connie before we start the public hearing? Mr. Chezak.
Mr. President. Thank you, Connie. You mentioned the general fund. I believe at the last there was 19%. Is that correct?
For a commercial property owner, that's an additional tax set by the state that commercial and industrial properties pay.
That goes to the state general fund?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then if I remember correctly, in the beginning of this, you indicated the city will see a 0.6 increase of full-time employment.
Yes.
Okay,
So we hired, when we hired, we had 2 IT people that were full-time 100% to the city. And now we have a total technology department of 6. And some of the director's salary is allocated to some of our original 2 that we had in our IT department are allocated to BPU. And then the other 4 were allocated between the city and the BPU, which equates to a 0.6 increase in FTEs.
okay, then you did indicate the police has a 1.5 increase of FTE?
So back in 2020, well, let's see,
24,
in 24, we budgeted back up to get to 27 sworn officers, and that was a huge impact to our levy. And therefore, we're using the one-time public safety aid to help lessen that increase. So in 2024, we used 100%, 2025, we used 67%, and 2026, proposing to use 33% to fund those positions.
Okay, that's what I understand it's paying for, but when you gave that total increase of FTE, why wasn't the police included in that?
Because we have budgeted for 27 sworn officers in 24 and 25. So it's not an increase in the number of full-time officers. We're just using fund balance to pay for those officers.
Thank you. And then another question, kind of unrelated. If a person doesn't pay their taxes by the May deadline and or the October deadline, pays them late, what's the penalty?
I do not know that answer. I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's fair. Appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Jeff? Mr. Yeager?
Yes, thank you. I have just a quick question, somewhat unrelated here, but maybe you can help me to understand this. It's my understanding that once a person's homestead bumps over a $500,000 threshold, they are no longer eligible for the homestead credit. Do we track or do we know the value, or how many of houses are bumped from year to year, thus creating, becoming no longer eligible for that? Do we track that number? Do we know
We
how
do
many
not
houses
track
are
that
falling
number.
closer to that bubble?
No, we do not track that. And for pay year 2025, that amount was increased. It went from $430,000 to $517,000, I do believe.
Okay.
So the state sets that.
So that's being adjusted also. So it's not a helpful predictor for future levy amounts, knowing that as our values increase, we'd be getting closer to that bubble. So,
Correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I assume maybe the county would be holding on to information that could be sifted through to get that number maybe
Yep.
year to year.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Bevins?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Chair. I think they're for Mr. Yeager as our airport liaison, if I may. If you recall, last year, we levied $1,000 for the airport. And this year, I think it's 215.
15.
So my question is, we sent a letter to the county board requesting that they discuss ownership of the airport. And I understand we received a letter from Debbie Erickson, who's not a county board member, or at least not a voting one, to my knowledge, saying that the county board was not interested in discussing ownership. Is that true, to your knowledge?
Do you know the date of the letter that you're referencing?
Would have been prior to your term, would have been prior to January 1st, 2025.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yeah, go for
Yeah, Mr. Bevins, I can't speak to that letter or, what the temperature was between the city of Brainerd and Crow Wing County at the time that letter was sent. What I can speak to is that at the meeting that myself and Mr. Johnson attended with the county, I can say, as I kind of reported as a follow-up to that meeting at the city council during the airport ticker, that the conversation was much less tepid and actually seemed to be generally in support of revising the amounts of tax of levy amount for county versus city.
Okay, that's my second question is, we sent a second letter written, and I presume to Debbie Erickson, the county administrator, about the possibility of administrating of the county administrating the entire levy. And I believe, at least from my perspective, I can't speak for the rest of you, part of that is we split the levy request, or whatever we agree on as for the levy, this year $215,000. But our portion, at least to my knowledge, also gets, our citizens also get taxed at the county level. I have seen a letter from Debbie Erickson saying that they had discovered a way to stop that taxation of the Brainerd citizens. To your knowledge, has that happened in the last year since we asked them to look at that?
To my knowledge, nothing has been implemented in the last year. To my knowledge, there has been conversations and general support
Okay.
to go that direction.
So a year later, nothing has happened. I've not seen it. I have no problem if Mr. Johnson wishes to interject.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
I would say nothing has been finalized. I wouldn't say nothing has happened, because 2 years ago, when we started the conversation and sent letters, literally nothing happened. This year, we've had meetings, we've had conversations. It's moving. We're having a conversation about the airport with the county, and it's been good. We have no resolutions, but something is happening, even though it's not yet completed.
I would concur.
Okay,
Government is slow.
I get this, but, okay. So maybe I'm just being impatient. My second question is, if we continue with the 50-50 administration of the levy, and we each levy our citizens, we levy the city of Brainerd citizens, they levy everybody else outside the county. So the taxation issue gets fixed. Our citizens are still paying more per person or per household than the county ones. And truth be told, that was part of my vote for the $1,000 was to try and use some leverage to get the county to make this more fair to the citizens of Brainerd. So your confidence is high that they'll at least discuss it?
Not only is my confidence high that they will at least discuss it, but I know that they are discussing it. I can tell you that at the meeting that I was at, everyone in the room unanimously agreed that the system of tax, that the system that we are currently using for tax now is unfair and needs reform.
And did it come up that even stopping taxing the citizens of Brainerd, the county part, still is unfair? Significantly, because we just don't have as many people as the county. So we take the same amount of dollars.
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson. Yep.
Yeah, we had that conversation, and that's why there was full agreement, even from the county side, that their tax capacity is probably over 10 times. Connie's been looking into it and working with the county. It's happening, but they're probably over 10 times the tax base as us. So if we
Right.
both give 215, if you live in Brainerd, you're paying 10 times what somebody who lives outside of Brainerd. And everybody is aware of that, and I think everybody is initially in agreement to changing that.
Okay, I might.
Giving it 100% to the county, I don't think is where it will end up. But better than what it is now, yes.
Okay, my concern is, it's been a year. They haven't even responded to the second letter. I don't share the same faith. Having been on this board through numerous meetings regarding the assessment of Laurel Street, and the county attorney sitting right there at that podium arguing against the county paying their, what I would say, fair share from the city of Brainerd standpoint, I don't have the same confidence. You'd think they would have written a letter in a year. I just don't know. And plus, there's other municipalities. I'm just worried that it's always the city, all the unfairness financially seems to fall on the city of Brainerd. When we deal with our friends to the west, it seems to. I would have thought as a courtesy, they would have sent a letter. In a year, they could have scratched one out on a cocktail napkin. We're looking at it. Thank you for your request. But they haven't. And I think my last question is, or last two questions is, we had some expenses that we weren't billing. I don't know who we bill for. I don't know, I understand we bill for IT, and I don't know if we bill the county or the airport, but I guess it really doesn't matter. But again, a year ago, we discussed billing for human resources, billing for financial that Connie puts in. To your knowledge, has anybody paid anything towards either of those two?
I can't speak to what happened in 2025, but I can speak to the fact that this was a topic of conversation when crafting the 2026 budget. And the discussion was basically that we are going to take IT, human services, and put and move all of that money into professional services that would then be thus equally split, as per the charter says now, 50-50 between county and city. Of course, obviously, potentially that
The
changes
city would pay that. We
equally.
wouldn't bill the airport. It wouldn't come out of the airport's levy.
I think you would be billing the airport exactly.
And then the
And then it's-
airport would adjust their budget and levy accordingly
That's correct.
and make the payment.
Yep.
So I don't know, and maybe Connie, have we received anything in 2025 for 2025 services that we previously weren't billing them for, such as human resources?
No, we have not. It is starting effective 2026.
Okay, so a year after we requested that they discuss that and we felt it was unfair, they still haven't responded with any kind of response at all.
I thought it was going to be effective 2026. I don't think there has been discussion that the airport would pay for those services prior to 2026 because it was not in their budget. It was not in our budget. Therefore, we started going in 2026.
Yeah, I get that, but they could have, we could have started billing them January 1st.
And we will start in
2025.
2020. Oh,
Or whenever we knew what the amount was, we could have started billing them. Correct? I mean, we could have.
I don't know. That would be up to
So-
City Administrator Boreals.
Here's my point. Part of the reason I voted for the $1,000 was not to be mean to the airport, but to try and get some leverage from the county. And a year later, I don't think it's worked. And I find it very disappointing. And I want to support the airport's levy request. I think the airport is essential. But it seems like the deal that we signed, however many years ago, it needs to be looked at in a more timely manner. Again, it seems like, once again, the city of Brainerd is left holding, the citizens of Brainerd, not us seven, but the citizens of Brainerd are left holding the financial bag because of our partners in government. And it just doesn't seem fair. And then we're asked to respond to a 50% increase from the request from 2024 for the 2025 budget, which we didn't do. But, so I'm on the library board. We did a 0% in 2024 and a 2% in 2025. What happens, how do I tell somebody, well, we're going to give the airport a 50% or 2 years at 25% increase? When I have people that argue the library is just as important, and I don't know that I would make that argument, but I know a lot of people might, that they're in and out of that library every day. So my question is, and this will be my final question, how do I tell my constituents that the library was worth 0 and 2, but the airport gets 50%, and you just saw it up there, from 145 to 214 something or whatever it was, roughly over 2 years, not counting the fact that we gave them absolutely nothing last year, which wasn't fair to the airport. I'm not making that argument at all. How do I justify telling them that the airport gets that much? And maybe Gabe can answer that. Gabe?
That's an easy justification. There's a statutory minimum that we're required to levy for libraries. Nearly every county and every city levies what they're legally required to give to the library. We, being the generous taxpayers of Brainerd, levy, what is it, Connie? 35, 40% more than the statutory minimum? And And further, when they don't take care of the building, which is the reason we pay them the extra money is to maintain the building, when they don't take care of it, we'll just write them another $500,000 check to fix their roof. That's easily justifiable. We just did that this year. We didn't give them that 2%, but we gave them $500,000 for a roof. The airport has never asked us $500,000 for a roof.
Gotcha.
So they're not the exact same.
Okay. So you're it's just the way it is, the library. We don't have to legally.
We pay the library significantly more than we have to. We have fighting tooth and nail for years now to pay the airport as little as possible. Last year it was $1,000. We don't do that with the library.
Gotcha.
Our baseline is not the statutory minimum. So they're treated much better than the airport is. From the
Gotcha.
city budget.
Is there a limitation or a statute on airport levies?
Not that I'm aware of, Neil.
Okay. Okay, so it's just, and Mr. Yeager did a great job earlier this year discussing the value of the increase for the levy. So I'm not trying to dispute the value of the $214,000. I'm going to support it tonight. I just need to understand. I went with $1,000 last year with the hopes that we'd get something from our partners across the street and got absolutely nothing. One meeting this summer with a lot of handshakes. And it just doesn't seem fair. I've seen it before from the county, and I've seen it before from our friends to the west, and I just don't think it's fair to the citizens of Brainerd. I understand time will tell, but thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing else to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bevins. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, it sounds like you should send the county a letter about the library. It sounds like you're more concerned about that. Maybe we should send them a letter about the library.
Mr. Chesak?
I echo a couple of Mr. Bevins's concerns. Typically, I think in normal practice and procedure, when this governing body asks the county a question related to a shared responsibility like the airport, in my opinion, I think Mr. Bevins got it. We haven't seen anything from the county board. And then if I could just reel back a little bit from what I'm saying here is when Mr. Johnson and Mr. Yeager met with county reps, who exactly were those individuals? The county.
Johnson?
Well, from the county board was Commissioner Barrows, and then Administrator Erickson was there, and a number of their financial team. A
Okay,
few
so
players.
I guess to my point is, I've followed the county agenda, and never since this whole thing came up, we have seen an item on any agenda, whether that's a committee of personnel or finance or budget or anything, or a regular board meeting or committee of the whole, nothing. So I don't know what it takes. I've seen the responses from Administrator Erickson answering for the county board, but again, that's like taking a poll of, I think you all know how I feel about those. If Nick were to ask each of us how we feel about something, that would be essentially a definition of council action if we're giving an opinion or a response to something, and I would be vehemently against doing things that way. I don't know how the county gets that information, how the administrator gets that information, but I know I can ask if there's minutes regarding an action, and I know we won't find any. So that goes back to Mr. Bevins's point about not actually seeing anything from the county. The other thing about the taxation is, Connie, you referred to it as no double tax, and I just want to caution everybody. It never has been a double tax. I've been known to have used that term. It is a twice tax. And when the county decided to add 6% onto their levy to the airport, and last year they, or the year before, they offered us to decrease ours, and we did that. Think about how wonky that is. Now, essentially, whatever the county levies for the airport at that time, it went up 6% from 157,000. So that made it 160 whatever thousand, 168 or something. Now they're just taxing Brainerd citizens more when that happened, because it was that additional amount was still levied against the entire tax base of Crow Wing County, which included Brainerd citizens. So that formula, whoever thinks that's a fair way of doing things, is just completely wrong. And now, according to what we heard from Administrator Erickson, I guess, get back to that point, is they have agreed, starting next year, to remove Brainerd citizens from their portion of the airport levy. I guess that goes back to your question, Mr. Bevins. But yes, it is. I caution the use of double tax because it's not, and twice tax is a more appropriate term to use. There's been a little bit of a question raised on that in the past, and I think we clarified it. But just to clarify, it is a twice tax. However, not supposed to be happening as long as we contribute equally or more to the airport than the county. So, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chesak. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'll just have one final word on the airport. I'm not overly satisfied with how the process has gone. I think it is moving in the right direction, which is a good thing. It was appropriately, I believe, pointed out in that meeting we had that it's a city of Brainerd ordinance that both the city and the county follow. It's not a county ordinance. So if we want to just force something and do it, we would need to change our city ordinance. We can't wait on the county to change our ordinances. So we could just go change our ordinance. And we could do that in 2 meetings. But we're trying to, work together and hopefully something that everybody's happy with. But that's all I have. We can change the ordinance. If we want that, we could motion for that right now. But I think we give it a little bit more time.
All right. Right now, we're talking about the budget. This is all relevant to the budget, but we're definitely getting somewhere away from the center line. But if anybody else has a quick question for staff, one more time I'll ask. If not, then we do need to open a public hearing. So if there's anybody in the audience, I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:46. If you want to come up and approach the council regarding the budget, please do so now. And if you are online, press *3 to raise your hand. That way we know you want to speak. I'll ask one more time, if anybody wants to come up and address the council, please do so now. Nobody? JD? Okay. All right, with that, we will close the public hearing at 6:47. Are we looking for action on that? We're waiting. Okay, excellent. Moving on, next we have number 4. This is a discussion of developing Gustafson Park. And is this Mr. Kramvik?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Council directed staff to bring this item back to tonight's meeting. Staff provided City Council 3 options for Gustafson Park at the last City Council meeting. The Park Board discussed Gustafson Park at an earlier meeting, but did not make a formal recommendation. They were open to the idea. The 3 options that staff provided is option 1, work with the Brainerd HRA to allow them to meet with developers to potentially develop the property. This action would allow the HRA to begin working with the developer, but it would not officially convey the property. They would need to come back with a proposal. The city would not receive market rate and potentially no revenue. That would be up to the HRA on their proposal. It would add additional affordable housing to Brainerd. Option 2, direct city staff to bring a preliminary plan to the Park Board for a formal recommendation and receive a quote from a surveying company to replat the property. City Council would make a final decision at a future meeting. Again, selling the properties at market rate could generate about 7 lots, ranging in price from $15,000 to $30,000 depending on size. Total revenues may be between $120,000 to $155,000. Again, this is very preliminary. It's kind of a ballpark number when reviewing what other properties in Brainerd have sold for. Residential properties have sold relatively quickly when priced right. Staff does not anticipate any sales in 2026. With this option, the goal would be to go through the planning process of replatting, obviously working with the surveying company, and have them listed by the end of the year. And then finally, option 3 would be to entertain no future discussion on the development of Gustafson Park and leave the property in its current state. And with that, I can answer any questions. Also, Eric can answer any questions on behalf of the HRA.
Thank you, Mr. Kramvik. Does anybody have questions for James?
I have a motion when you're ready.
I have a question.
Mr. Bevins.
I actually have 2 questions. One is there, and I heard at the last meeting that the Park Board had determined this was not a property they wanted to maintain as a park, and nor could they afford to keep it as a park unless we raised their levy. I heard that from a council member, not a park board member. I'd like to see if our park liaison, Mayor Bedeau, knows, is there minutes to show that? Because I suspect there might be people who don't like us if we choose option 1 or 2.
No?
Yeah, once again, this is not about whether or not this particular property is a money-making venture. This is about a philosophy as to whether or not we can or cannot continue to maintain the properties that we have. I can't speak as to whether or not this particular property is a crutch to fall on. What I can say is that the park board is operating underfunded and is trying to find ways of getting themselves back from underneath that. That's looking at every single unit within the entire system. That's every single bench that we own, every single tree that we have, every single blade of grass that we have. So when the question was brought forward to them, would you be interested in this? I think it was a split decision. The park board said, take a look at it and see what comes back. Beyond that, I don't think the park board has made any vocal representation as to whether or not they want or diswant Gustafson Park. I think they're split on that. But I think from a simple budgeting standpoint, something's got to give at some point. And you put this in front of them, they said, well, let's find out if this is the something.
I get you. Thank you. Is it possible to get, and I'll ask staff if it's possible, Tony, to get the minutes that show that? Just because I suspect there might be people who are. I get calls all the time, why can't we have more parks? Right? It's often about the money. And the second question is for Mr. Kramvik, and that's, is there an economic difference? I know sometimes we convey property to the EDA to sell. Would there be an economic difference? You mentioned option 1, we would give the property to the HRA and therefore we'd receive no proceeds. But as Mr. Johnson suggested, if we sell the property ourselves, which is option 2, we might be able to offset some of those park board deficits. And my question is that the primary difference between option 1 and 2 is who sells it and who gets the money?
That is, again,
Okay.
the HRA board would have to approve, any type of funding to go towards that, whether it be some or little
Or none?
or none.
Could just be, people build houses all the time without city funding.
Correct, and the HRA would probably work with, I can't completely speak for them, but typically they work with one developer to try to develop an overall property, much like Brainerd Oaks. And at that point, they'd work with the developer, probably come with some type of replat for that area with the idea of what the developer wants to do. The city side of things, you'd probably look at replatting it to sell the properties individually. A little bit longer initial process, but then the properties would most likely sell a lot faster if they're individually replatted.
Thank you. So, but it would save us money if we presume the HRA would give the developer some sort of financial benefit, like you just suggested.
So,
I mean, that's taxpayer money.
so the city process, we'd have to pay for a survey to replat it, where obviously we wouldn't be doing that from the HRA, but then obviously we'd receive potentially market rate on it, which would then go back to maybe funding a future park or go into whatever revenue the city council would choose.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Bevins?
No, thank you.
Anyone on this side? Mr. Chesak?
Yeah, did we ever determine the amount of staff time? I believe that all we do now is mow this park. Is that correct, Mr. Havercourse?
Mr.
Yes,
Haberhorst?
Mr. Chair, we do mow it, and we also maintain that alley, that walkway. We brush that with our skid steer in the winter to keep that sidewalk clean.
And is there any idea of the amount of staff time used, like monthly or?
During the summer, I did some analysis, and from Connie's FEMA regarding equipment use and our use for equipment such as the mower and the skid steer, the staff time for the summer is about 3 hours per week, depending on the rainfall during the summer or the winter based on snowfall. But it's about $8,000 to $12,000 per year based on the rainfalls and snowfall
You say staff time is about 3 hours per month?
per week.
Okay. All right. I just have one comment, Mr. President. Surprisingly, this was an article in the newspaper, and I heard from a lot of people on this, and to a person, everybody said they don't want to see this go away. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And I agree. Mr. Yeager used the term at our last meeting about this shiny object, and it seems like that's what we're doing here, is looking at that as a potential revenue, and it's, once it's gone, it's gone. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else down here? Tad, go ahead.
Question for James. James, when you were describing option 2, I believe you, perhaps I misheard, but you referenced getting that plat done by the end of the year. Is that the short time frame on that? It's so that it could affect this levy, or what's the rush on that?
Again, it wouldn't affect, in staff's opinion, this year's levy. To be able to go through the entire replating process, have city council agree to a surveyor, go with a brokerage company for residential properties and get them listed. The goal would be essentially by the end of the year to get that entire process done, but it wouldn't, in staff's opinion, it would not affect the 2026 levy.
Just to move expeditiously, but there wouldn't be we wouldn't have to do it by the end of the year.
Yep.
Bound by that if we did select that. All right, thank you.
Mr. Erickson, Mr. Yeager?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to maybe just share just a couple of my thoughts on evaluating this. This is clearly a discussion that is squarely in the gray area. If there is an obvious answer one way or another, hasn't presented itself to me. But in preface to this meeting tonight, I went through and just kind of made a general list of kind of what I think are some pretty notable advantages or pros, and then there's clearly some cons here. The advantages that I see are there's primarily 4 key advantages. One is that short-term liquidity. That seems to be right easily at our grasp. We have a long-term tax base ability here. We also have the concept that we've talked about of removing some of the burden of responsibility of maintaining from our parks. We have the ability to turn that liquidity into something that can go to one of our other parks. But I think another key aspect of this is the expectation, probably well-founded, to, in a very short time frame, add 17 to 14 dwelling units within our city. That could happen at market rate with the free marketplace just doing what it does. I believe that's the entire impetus of this conversation, is that the marketplace right now appears to bear out that ability. And I think that is something that we should strongly consider, our ability to add housing stock to our city when we have the ability. Clearly, one of the cons here is that people in Northeast Brainerd, especially those directly adjacent to this property, whom are used to seeing, a park or a grass space across the street, may not have that. That's clearly a con. I understand that. One thing I do want to point out is that an entity called Trust for Public Lands, they're a national organization that helps cities and municipalities understand where parks should be and how they should be built and so forth. They have what they call Green Mile. And that is a park within a mile to pretty much everybody within your city. This area here falls squarely within a half mile one direction to a beautiful park and another half mile to another beautiful park. So I'm just weighing out those pros and cons and just lend those to your ear for consideration as well. So I have no appetite to die on the hill of the Gustafson Park conversation. That's just my thought here and as I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head as far as what I'm thinking. It's not something that we need to decide today. I definitely lean, if we're gonna go with an option, I think option 2, it still leaves it open one way or another. If we get that information and we decide we don't wanna go ahead and replat or have it surveyed, we don't have to. If we decide to do it and then we find that it's worth X amount of money and we can sell it to a developer and the park board is in 100% agreement, then at least we know. But right now, this discussion is just about which direction we want to go. Are we saying absolutely not, or are we asking for a little bit more information so we can make a good decision in the future? And that's where I sit. So if we're going to go with any of these 3 options up here, I definitely lean towards option 2. If we go a year and this is on the market and doesn't move at all, then I can definitely see handing it over to the HRA as well, or keeping it as a park. Things can change over time. So if we want to move forward on this, I would look for a motion, but you guys can motion whatever you would like.
Mr. Chair, I've got a motion.
Mr. Johnson.
I'd move to direct staff to bring a preliminary plan to the park board for a formalized recommendation and receive a quote from a surveying company to replat the property, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by, I heard the first one down this way.
I believe it was Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Erickson, okay. Mr.
Yeah,
Johnson,
now that we have a motion, I'll speak to it. I think this is the easiest low-risk option to take. If the market, which the duplex market does seem to be really strong right now, if the market bears it out that housing is feasible to be built there, we will be solving a problem in our community of adding more housing. If it's not feasible, we're still going to be mowing it. There'll still be grass in that neighborhood. And if it doesn't sell for a year or two, we can say, hey, maybe it's just best as a park. But doing nothing is fine too. But I prefer option two. I think we should just look into it and see what happens over the next year or two.
Mr. Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also support the motion and tried to second it, for all the reasons that Mr. Johnson brought up, and especially the one that he didn't bring up, and that's that the park board has already decided that this is beyond their financial means to continue to maintain this. And as I said a week ago, I hope they look at all the parks, because if they're in the dire financial straits, and really parks gotta be one of the top 3 reasons that people move to a community, so I support the parks. But it appears there's some issue here between what we're funding the parks with, the dollars and cents, and what the parks needs to survive at a minimum. And I would, as part of the decision going forward, do we raise the parks levy because it's absolutely necessary to maintain what we currently have? Or do we look at maybe selling off some of our other parks, which I hope is not the case, but I also understand the economics that parks don't generate any revenue. I live by one, so I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, I'm the liaison to the park board. I've been the liaison to the park board for 10 years. And I do that because I love our parks. It's actually the one thing in the city that I care the most about. I spend most of my time thinking about the parks. When I started 10 years ago, I was not excited about our budgeting process at the park department or at the park board. I thought it was a mess. Actually, I'll even go so far as to call it a joke. We were not doing a good job of budgeting and making sure that we were keeping an eye on stuff. Where we are now with that park board and with those people that have been doing it, worlds beyond. But that came with a long process of doing exactly what you said. These park board members went into every single park. Mr. Yeager, you were on there. Every single park. Went through every single item that we have. Made a list of it exhaustively. I have sat through so many park board meetings doing exactly what you're saying. They've done all this. And all they're saying is, look, we got to figure out something, because what we want to have is the best parks that we can have. We can have as many parks as we want, but if we have as many parks as we want, we're not going to have the best parks that we can have. So let's pick what we can do and what we can do best. And what I've heard from them on a regular basis is, let's cut the grass, let's trim the trees, and let's give people a place to be. Gustafson's a great example of that. I will just remind the council that you are the ones that started this. You took it off of the park board's plate by not dedicating it as park board land and started the entire conversation. The park board has just simply continued in this process saying, yeah, take a look at it. It's not parkland anyways. You've never dedicated this back as parkland because you as a council voted, and I'd like to see the record to see how you voted, Kelly, because I had a feeling you voted in favor, but you may not have.
Actually, according to Mrs. Cope, it was done shortly after Garfield burned, so it was before I was on.
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just recently in these chambers, we rededicated all the parkland because we had never done it. And when we did that, the council left off this park and they left off the Trailside Park. That was a decision made by the council.
Part of Buffalo Hills.
The park board, part of Buffalo Hills as well, which has also been looked at. The park board is simply trying to just figure out a way to have the best parks they can possibly have. And if you bring it back to them, I'm sure they're going to say the same thing. We'd love to figure out how to have the best parks that we can possibly have. City of Brainerd, you tell us what's a park, and we'll take care of it. and we'll take care of it as best we can. We're also gonna have to tell you that it's gonna cost some money, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But at the same time, just again, I think everyone on the park board loves this park. They think they want to keep this park. You said it's not a park. They said, well, take a look at it, see if you want to have it or not. They said, sure, go ahead and take a look at it. Now here we are. I don't think it's as complicated as we've tried to make the whole thing out. And for the people of Northeast Brainerd, who is near and dear to my heart because I grew up there playing in this park, right down the street, literally 2 blocks away from here is where I grew up. Love this park, don't want to see it go. But decisions have to make sometimes, and I will support whatever decision the council makes on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else? If we have no further comments, we have a motion. And if you want to read option 2, that is the motion, correct?
It is. I left off that city council may final decision in a future meeting because that's just obvious in how we work. It's not
That just
required in the
is what
motion.
It is, correct, okay.
Mr. President, roll call, please.
Absolutely. All right, Tony, go ahead and call the roll.
Yeager.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes?
Chesak.
No.
Johnson.
Yes.
O'Day.
Yes. That motion carries. All right, moving on. Next, we have a discussion on the annex. This is a discussion on the future usage for City Hall Annex Building. And this is Mr. Habegorst.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attached to this agenda item is the information provided to his council on the November 17th meeting. At that meeting, staff was directed to discuss this item at the December 8th special council meeting. The city council has several decisions to make about the future of the City Hall Annex building. Usage should be considered first. Should we sell it? If we do, we have an appraisal of the annex building and staff would advise to sell it as is. We can keep it as a city asset, and with that, we have 2 options. We could lease it or keep it for city staff. Whether we lease it or keep it for city staff, it is advisable to complete the stated improvements on November 17th. Recommendations include the following. We could sell the annex and council could direct staff to list the property. Number 2, we could keep the annex as a city asset and complete the improvements. Direct staff to hire Woodseth to develop a scope of work for the bidding process, or direct staff to award the proposal with high-techs using the Gordian process. Number 3 is to keep the city annex as an asset with no improvements. And with that, we can take any questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Have a
Habegorst.
motion when you're ready.
Does anybody have questions? Mr. Chesak?
Yeah, with the high-tech proposal, what's our deadline to give them the word if we want to do that or not to maintain our current price, say,
It was 30 days from the proposal,
which is the 17th of this month?
and so that, he indicated it was 30 days from that last council meeting.
Which was November 17th?
Right.
Okay.
So that'd be December 17th.
That might be my preference is to go with the offer from High Tech to get that amount of work done that they're proposing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chesak.
Johnson says he has a motion, so.
Mr. Mayor?
I just have a quick question for staff real quick. If the council chose to make this a park, could the council make this a park?
Indoor playground?
We don't have any money for any more parks.
Oh, imagine.
Who's gonna mow the lawn?
We'd have to sell one.
There isn't a lawn.
Okay, anybody have any real questions? No? Okay. Mr. Johnson, sounds like you have a motion ready.
Yeah, I'd move that we keep the annex as a city asset and complete the improvements by directing staff to award the proposal to High Tech with the Gordian process and the attached contract, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Chesak. Any discussion on that, Mr. Johnson?
These are repairs that need to be made to the building. I mean, we still haven't really decided what we're going to do with it, or if, right, this is where we're making that decision, but even if we decide to keep it, it's still just going to be sitting there empty. We don't know what we're doing, but it needs windows, it needs the roof, the furnace, the HVAC. Let's get all of that done, and then when we decide if we are gonna move IT out into their own building, we can do that, but we don't know what we're doing yet. But I think we should keep it, because the cost of this contract, of kind of securing the shell of the building at the very least, is a reasonable price at a couple $100,000. Or if we wanted to tear that down and build a 3,000 square foot structure or whatever it is, it'd be astronomical. So I think it's prudent to keep the building, do the necessary repairs.
Right, and if we don't do these repairs now, they're only gonna get more expensive later. And there's a good chance that we might have issues with more rot in the windows and different issues with the heating and HVAC that aren't there yet. Mr. Bevins, did you have something to add?
Just that I support the motion for all the reasons presented, and I would hope, since we do not have plans for the building at this point in time, as has been previously stated, I would hope we would look at 2A on the alternatives as far as like trying to generate some lease income. We used to have the state of Minnesota, Community Action used to be in there, and it's a cool old building. So I would hope, we've actually had one request to purchase it, maybe that person would consider leasing it. I don't know. But if we lease it for $1, it'd be more than what we're getting now.
Yeah. I think 2A is actually directed more towards more of an extensive improvement on the building. So a more detailed,
You'd be surprised at what people pay money for.
oh, we watch it all the time.
Yeah, I know you do.
Mr. Yeager?
Yes, thank you. And I was really looking forward to this conversation. I believe the impetus of this even coming up onto, before us tonight is so that we could have a vision of what to do with this building before we choose to spend any money on it. And I still kind of feel that way. My concern with just moving forward, even with this money, is it narrows our window of opportunity or the ability to adjust to what the market might be telling us if we decide to not keep this. Because I would feel like, I want to not only make what it was worth at the time of the appraisal, plus what we just spent on it, which I believe narrows our ability potentially to the marketplace. So I just feel like this is a bit of a myopic decision, so I'm not going to support it, even though it may end up being the right decision. I just don't feel like it's the right thing for me right now because we just don't have the total vision of what to do with it. I'm not in favor of just spending money just in case. That's all.
Thank you.
But I do appreciate the dialogue.
I do think that you make a very solid point that we should maybe try and come up with a consensus on what we're going to do in the future with this building. My feeling is that I know we're going to have to expand eventually, and our staff can find space in there. I think it's the least expensive route to expand City Hall. It's connected to City Hall as well. So if we sold it, we no longer have control over the maintenance inside the building to an extent. And if there happened to be a fire connected to our City Hall, I mean, worst case scenario, I don't even know if that's possible that fire could spread to our City Hall, but we've already had City Hall on fire once, and I don't want to see it happen again. At least once that I know of. Mr. Chezak?
Yes, a question related to the work that's being proposed the motion is to. Does this by chance increase the value of the property once this work is completed? Does anybody have an opinion on that?
Mr. President?
Mr.
I
Johnson?
have a very strong opinion on it, Jeff. We did receive one offer one time, and in the offer was, I'll give you this much money as long as you fix everything before I move in. So that offer was we would have to do this anyway to get what was offered to us. And I imagine anybody looking at this 110-plus-year-old building is going to want some allowances for basic repairs to the exterior shell.
A beautiful 100-year-old building, beautiful.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just offer just a counter opinion, if I may, in that if I was a buyer of this building, I would not want the work done beforehand because generally it's my belief that the public can purchase goods and services less expensively than government. So I would be trying to weigh that out as potentially myself as a buyer of this building. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but there may be two trains of thought as to whether or not we are really adding the value. And now that I do know that the last buyer said they would only buy it at the amount they offered with a couple $100,000 in work done, okay, that even is a little more concerning to me. So, but I'll support whichever way we go.
All right. Any more discussion on that motion? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries. And I do not think we have anything else left on this agenda tonight, so we are just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second, motion by Chezak, second by Bevins. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, same sign. Too bad, we're already adjourned.